Hello and welcome to Inside the Huddle, a very special one because we are together in person in the Sky Sports studios. I'm your host, Neil Reynolds, joined by Phoebe Schechter, who's with me every Thursday through the season. Phoebe, fancy surroundings.
I know. Look at that. I feel like we've really kind of upgraded ourselves.
We have.
Yeah, we've been doing a good job then, right?
Surroundings, yeah. I was going to say, we don't know if we're going to upgrade what we're going to talk about yet, but we can give it a good go. We're going to talk about news from around the NFL, what we noticed this week, what's on our radar. We're also going to look at games for week 3. It's week 3 already.
Crazy.
And just to start, my ears have stopped ringing. Finally,
Oh,
Minneapolis. That was a loud environment.
Honestly, you guys were so impressive the way you handled it because I've been in that stadium before and I know how loud it gets. Plus, you're on the ground level. I mean, what was that like? It looked incredible.
So there was it was really weird to be kind of right in amongst it to the point where, the punter's warming up literally right over your shoulder. Chris Conley almost ran into us during warm-ups, but then we were kind of in the crowded part for the game. And there was one bit, we were under the glass. The US Bank Stadium's got half kind of glass, and we're under the glass, so it's a bit greenhousey, it's a bit warm. And we were doing one of the first fills as the game had started. I was like, I could feel something fanning me. It's like, why am I being fanned? And I just kept doing the piece, didn't look behind me, and then realized that was the cheerleader's pom-poms. She was literally right over my shoulder. I had my own personal fan.
I mean, that's perfect. We did actually notice there was a cheerleader getting some screen time. So,
okay. Was she deliberately putting herself?
I think she might have been. She just thought, fan Neil Reynolds and get myself there. What a double whammy.
It's a 2 for 1 for her, absolutely. Let's talk some news. We knew about the Tua Tagovailoa injury on Monday when myself and Jeff spoke. It was his 4th concussion in 2 years, but now he's gone on injured reserve until at least week 8, but going to undergo further evaluations. I mean, is it fair to say, well, certainly his season, but his career kind of hangs in the balance at the moment?
I think it does. I mean, look, when you've got a concussion, there's always a minimum of 2 weeks that you need to be out anyways. But how does that work when he's already on his 4th, right? I mean, and because his always looks so much more severe than there's no great way to have a concussion, but we see his body tense up. It's never
they're visually more upsetting, aren't they?
They are, exactly. And so I think it's a good thing that they've put him on IR. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He just focus on recovering.
Yep.
I don't know what that means for how he's actually feeling at the moment as well, because he's going to have other symptoms off field. Right. But yeah, interesting. They've put him till week 8. I mean, his career, that this could be the end, and that's something that we've talked about quite a lot now.
The visuals are important because his family is going to be important in this as he weighs what he does. I know his mum spoke about after the ones that he had in 2022 that she wanted him to stop playing. So the visuals of it will be impactful to his people that are closest to him, probably to him as well. There is a money side of this as well because he's been guaranteed $162 million by the Miami Dolphins. If they clear him to play and he chooses not to play, he gives that money back. If he's not cleared to play medically, he gets that money. So it is a factor as well.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, this is your livelihood. We think a lot of these guys, you go through the college system, you grow up thinking, I'm going to just play in the NFL, and that's going to see me out into retirement. So you're always going to have that conversation playing on your mind. But I just think you have to consider what is your long-term health. And truthfully, it's scary. Again, it's an injury that you can't see.
Right.
But when you're back in the pocket, if you're potentially might get a concussion number 5, what does that mean? Like, how is your mind operating that? Because one sack could go wrong or one trip and fall. Like, at what point do you think it's too much or it's done irreversible damage?
And where it's scary as well, this probably wasn't the biggest of hits that Tua's ever taken, right? Damar Hamlin delivers a pretty regular hit. Was that fair to say?
Yeah. And I mean, there's other questions around that whole scenario anyways. The fact that he'd already achieved the first down. Why are you not sliding at that point? The game hadn't been going well for them anyways. Just save yourself a little bit. But when he ran into Damar, it's everything you're taught not to do. Head down, looking like this. You don't ever want to be having that kind of downward part on your spine. You're always taught keep your eyes up because when you impact it, the compression on your spine affects it as well. So there's a lot of questions about how that all came up.
We'll keep an eye on Tua's status. The Miami Dolphins are going to go with Skylar Thompson against Seattle up in the Pacific Northwest this weekend, week 3. More quarterback news. Bryce Young has been benched by the Carolina Panthers for Andy Dalton. First of all, we're going to do what we noticed a little bit later. I don't know if I didn't even check what yours are. But did you see Bryce Young signing an autograph for the fan at practice this week? He looked so sad.
I know.
And so down. And you're not supposed to feel sorry for millionaires. And he is a millionaire. But I feel sorry for this one because it's just a bad situation there in Carolina.
It is such a bad situation. Remember when the whole Sky team went out to the draft?
Such a nice guy.
Literally, everybody fell in love with him. So lovely to speak to. And it's so unfortunate that this is where he's at. And I know right now he's going to feel like he's let the team down, like he's failed, for himself, for his family, for the team, for the organization. But I genuinely think that this is only going to be good for him because he's kind of been like a swan in water, just kicking his feet so much for the past year and 2 weeks now, right? So I think he needs to just be able to breathe, take that pressure off of him, and really go back out there and go to the basics of why he's playing the sport, the fun, the love of it.
Right.
Because even when you watch him play, I kind of use the analogy of Simone Biles when she said she got the twisties, right? Where when you do your spins, you kind of lose track of where the floor is.
Okay.
It's like the same version of that for him. He's
like the yips for a golf.
He's just not seeing anything from his footwork to where his ball placement is.
Right.
It's like all coming apart at the seams. So I think it's probably good he gets to sit for a little bit.
Carolina are 0-2. They've been outscored 73-13 in the first 2 weeks of the season. I guess the backdrop of this and why this feels a little bit like a desperation move after just 2 weeks, as bad as those 2 weeks were, is the owner, David Tepper, fired Ron Rivera after 12 games in 2019, Matt Rule after 5 games in 2022, and Frank Reich after 11 games last season. So Dave Canales is on the clock.
He is, absolutely. And because they brought Dave Canales in after the great work he did with Baker Mayfield last year, previously being with Russell Wilson, they kind of thought of him as like the QB whisperer for guys like this. So it was really interesting. We kind of joked about it earlier in the week. After the game, Coach Canales comes in saying, Bryce Young is going to play. And then 24 hours later, Bryce Young is not going to play. So you wonder what that meeting is with Dave Tepper as well, because ultimately he is kind of the puppet master and it's his team and he's almost like the Jerry Jones of the organization. It's
certainly one to watch going forward because I think Dave Canales fits that mold of head coach who's a young coach who wants to be a head coach. Mm-hmm. So you'll be a head coach wherever you can be one.
Yes.
There must be a lot of people that look at that Carolina job and say, it's not for me. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even the fact that, this is his first time head coach as a head coach. So it was almost a surprise, really, when he got the role. I mean, lovely man as well, but it was a big job. That's not an easy first job. It's similar, again, if you were to get a first-time head coach role with the Dallas Cowboys. That would not be an easy role to come into because of the organization that's in place.
Spend as much time managing up as you do down.
Precisely.
Spend so much of your time looking after the owner.
And that's really hard to do. And I think a lot of times people forget when you come in as a head coach, you're really not coaching anymore. You are literally managing people, whether it is up above or your other coaches or the players. Your opportunities to do what you love and really have that impact really diminishes.
Let's talk about what we noticed this week. So each week on Inside the Huddle on a Thursday, we're going to scour the internet. And it's not official news releases, but it's things we noticed, which I think tell us a lot as well. So, Phoebe, what did you notice this week that you want to bring up and raise?
Well, because we hadn't shared these, I'm curious to see if you have the same one. Okay. But mine was Coach Callahan with the Titans.
Oh, hilarious.
Oh, my goodness.
To Will Levis.
Yes, screaming.
We're going to need the bleep machine.
Yeah, no, I will not say it. But it was very clear you did not need to be a lip reader to see him screaming, "What are you doing?" on the field.
With a few more words.
With a few more words, yes, expletives. Yeah. But then what really got me was the next day or at the press conference where he backed it up.
Yeah, he was like, well, I think you could see what I said.
Literally, he's done it twice now. Yeah. So for me, that is quite telling.
Right.
Because you do not want, as a head coach, you have to come in and you may have felt that way. Maybe in the press conference you say, hey, I was in the heat of the moment, but Will Levis, he's getting better. He's taking the coaching. Or as a coach, we're going to coach him better.
Yeah.
Not, Yeah, he's done
Did that last week. He's done that 2 weeks in a row.
I couldn't. I've never seen it. I love it.
It was a learning moment for the head coach. I wrote down 2 because I don't know what you're going to pick.
Perfect.
So I always, I thought Trevor Lawrence after Jacksonville's loss was quite interesting. He said, we suck right now. Yeah. He said he's pretty shocked. We've got to look in the mirror and fix it. That was interesting. But the one I wanted to talk about was I guess awkward is the best way to describe it. The post-game meeting at midfield of CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams after Houston had beaten the Chicago Bears. And for me, it's awkward because I feel like CJ Stroud benefited from veteran quarterbacks coming up to him and saying, hey, stick with it. You're going to be great.
Yeah.
And he feels like he needs to do that. But he's a really young guy doing it to another young guy.
Yeah.
He's barely been in the league. But I wasn't impressed by Caleb's reaction. His face, I was just like, oh, hang on a minute. I've been telling everyone what a nice guy you were. Yeah. And it was just weird. And I don't think either of them came across very well.
No. And again, I hear what you're saying. Like, that's what happens when you got the vets coming up to the young guys. Yeah. But you're a year apart. There is not enough distance.
You could see Caleb go, okay, whatever. Why are you telling me? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, because it also goes to show where CJ Stroud feels he is in comparison. In year 2, but he feels like he's just in such a better place, just as a better overall quarterback and athlete. Right. So I think there's just so many kind of hidden layers in there. And that's not saying that that's what CJ meant to get across. But if you're Caleb Williams, I'd about to be like, who are you?
Yeah, well, CJ Stroud is very interesting. His off-season, he was on different podcasts, ranking quarterbacks in the NFL. It's like, you got 1 year under your belt. And I just think he's such a fan of the game that he wants to talk about the game. There's another clip online of him going up to Jalen Johnson of the Bears and saying, don't tip your hand on the Richard Sherman podcast. So it's very weird how much CJ Stroud talks. Yes. Which is kind of entertaining and fun, but it's not what we normally see.
No, and it is entertaining and fun, but a lot of times teams don't want that. No, you don't want that level of publicity. You don't want that kind of conversation. You don't want those distractions ultimately. But it's weird when it's such a young guy doing it.
I think he was well-meaning.
Yes.
But maybe took on too much to do that, but I wasn't impressed with Caleb's response. That's something to kind of watch.
Yeah, I know. And he's just in such a tough spot right now. And, pretty much coming off a game where he was the most sacked quarterback in the league. Right. You're not thinking about this other quarterback you're going against who,
flowers.
Literally like, oh my goodness, guy.
So we'll certainly keep an eye on Caleb's progress. As Phoebe mentioned, he was sacked 7 times against the Houston Texans. What else is on your radar? What are we looking at in the coming weeks to see if it becomes a problem, becomes an issue, or becomes a good thing even?
Good thing. So I mean, a couple of different things. First off, kind of going off the back of what you just said, the honesty that I feel like we are seeing on the podiums lately is just hilarious. I'm just to kind of pick up on like Bo Nix just saying, I threw it to the other team. He thought, oh my goodness. Or just Aaron Rodgers talking about, finding Breece Hall. Right. There's just so much more honesty out there, which I don't think we're really
we're not used to that. You're right. Absolutely.
But I mean, looking at some of the teams that we have right now, I just think really fascinating to see. I've kind of mentioned a couple times where the Seahawks are going. I mean, Geno Smith coming off of one of the best games that he's had.
They get a lot of attention for a 2-0 team.
At all.
I think with Seattle, we might, I don't know about you, but when I look at results, I'm guilty of looking at that score, and then I'll get about 5 or 6 games. How did Seattle get on? Yeah. Or obviously if you're following it as it progresses, but they're never the headline.
At all. And I think they're just a team that, again, I love their head coach, Mike McDonald having Adam Dirty out there, kind of brings a bit more attention, but their defense is incredible. And it's always been a really strong part of the puzzle. And then the other one, which is a conversation that I've overheard lately, was the conversation around the AFC. And I'm bringing it back to my Bills, but Josh Allen, if there was no Patrick Mahomes, would we be talking about Josh Allen more based off, right?
Well, the way he started as has been MVP level. We didn't mention that your Bills beat the Dolphins. I think we agreed that I owe you a coffee.
You do.
But we agreed it was such a beating that I owe you a piece of cake with the coffee whenever we meet up next. So thanks for that, Miami. But yeah, Josh Allen is elite.
Yeah.
He is elite. Look what he did last year at the back end, put that team on his shoulders. He's done it again at the start of this season. And the window is supposed to be snapped shut. I think we've got a Joe Burrow situation. Burrow said for the Bengals, the Super Bowl window's open the whole time I'm here.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same with Josh Allen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, and you've always had those rivalries, right? But it's normally an NFC and AFC rivalry.
Right.
You don't normally have such a stacked AFC,
Right.
whether you are talking
loaded.
about. Yeah. So it's almost like we're wanting this NFC quarterback to appear,
Right.
But the real battle and the real fun, I think, is watching the Joe Burrows,
Right.
the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the guys that just manage to amaze us week in and week out.
So I've got a couple again.
Ooh.
We really need to kind of,
I know,
so I don't have to
but
do
there's
two.
so much
I know.
happening.
So I'll give you quickly one. Let's look out for Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator of the Colts. His run defense has given up 150 plus to Joe Mixon, 150 plus to Josh Jacobs. They've given up 474 on the ground in 2 games. That can't just be run fits being bad.
No.
That's got to be some, I don't want to say that word, toughness.
Yeah,
You've got to. You're letting Green Bay ran the ball 53 times on them.
It's horrible. And I think that's a historic number. It's something like since 2000 that there's been rushing that large. I mean, that's incredible. But there's definitely like you're saying, a toughness element, a will, a desire to be better than the person across from you.
Right.
And Indianapolis, we're kind of known for being a tough team. And
especially when they knew that it's Malik Willis at quarterback, not Jordan Love.
You knew
they're going to come and run the football.
Exactly.
And you still didn't stop it.
No.
So that's one. I think the 49ers offense, as good as they've been historically, is something to watch. Brock Purdy was sacked 6 times in Minnesota. If you think back to the Super Bowl, it ended with Purdy under a lot of pressure. Chris Jones gets up the middle. They have to kick a field goal. Mahomes gets the winning touchdown. No Christian McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel's now going to go out. Brandon Ayuk's had 6 catches in 2 games.
Yeah.
So it starts actually up front for me, which we thought was a strength.
Yeah.
It maybe isn't. And so how do they cope, especially without the chess piece of Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, hugely. And, Jordan Mason's done a great job coming in for that, but that's not necessarily your long-term answer because Christian McCaffrey just offers you such, just the ability to use him in different ways, his explosiveness, his ball catching ability. But it does make me worry, especially when, the Vikings defense are so unique in its own right.
Yep.
But at the end of the game, for Brock Purdy to come off the field and just say, I have no idea, essentially, what you were doing defensively does not offer me confidence. Plus, and again, teams cannot necessarily mimic what the Vikings do because they're so specific.
Right.
But teams are going to try and confuse and disguise and find their way of presenting what the Vikings have done.
And when you're looking at McCaffrey, you got a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver wrapped up in one player.
Yeah.
That's a lot of offense to lose.
Hugely.
So we make we won't do picks yet. We're going to pick the 3 games that we've got on Sky Sports on Sunday. So we're on air at 5:00. Our first game is Philadelphia at New Orleans at 6:00. Then we've got a couple of teams that are smart in Baltimore at Dallas at 9:25. And Sunday Night Football is the Chiefs at the Atlanta Falcons. But we'll do a few other games as well that interest us. So let's start with Houston and Minnesota then. 2-2-0 teams. When I think of Houston, I would normally last year think of CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
But Joe Mixon led the way in week 1. The defense showed up. So doesn't have to just be CJ Stroud. That's hugely encouraging.
Massively. I mean, that's been one of the most impressive things is their run game and how, Joe Mixon has just been a game changer for them, to be honest. So him getting most of their offensive pieces back, Tank Dell's been terrific. Stephon Diggs has been a great addition as well. This matchup I'm really excited for because are they going to come against the Vikings and just run the ball because of what that defense does.
Mixon's got an ankle injury. There's 2 stars in this game that may not even play. Mixon left last week with an ankle injury and Justin Jefferson left with a quad injury. So, but you would like to think that Houston would, if they had him, would try and test that run defense.
Yeah, hugely, because of what they're able to do. Their run fits work, but because they have so many moving pieces, sometimes they don't always get down where they need to be in the right times. But I just love Sam Darnold. I love what I never thought that we would be saying that. I mean, you saw him live. I mean,
and he looked fantastic. And the pass on the final drive that set up the field goal where he hits Jalen Naylor over the middle, there's like 3 defenders around. It's third down. He throws a back shoulder over the middle that only Naylor can catch. And it was, I mean, Josh Metellus joined us afterwards and he said it was nasty. He said it was the nasty throw. Darnold's 2-0. He's completed 72% of his passes. Quarterback rating's around 112.
Amazing.
So it's no fluke. And I feel like he's got a chance to do what Baker Mayfield did in Tampa and what we're maybe seeing Derek Carr do in New Orleans. He looks really good in this system, and I think Kevin O'Connell's been good for him.
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Connell's done a great job of just, I mean, as a quarterback himself, just really helping to make Sam Darnold have easier reads, feel confident. I mean, we actually see him out there like believing in himself, which sounds a bit silly, but you know, he's not had much success over the years as we've seen. And I think that Kevin O'Connell's a great coordinator. I mean, look at what he did with Kirk Cousins as well. You know, people weren't sure about Kirk Cousins when he came there, but creating all that play action, utilizing, finding ways for him to be successful.
That's a really good point. How Darnold carries himself to compare to how he was in New York with the Jets when we had the whole I'm seeing ghosts thing and it kind of hung over him and he looked shell-shocked. He looked in command. He looks the real deal. The defense, you've mentioned it a couple of times, Minnesota, 11 sacks in 2 games and they've allowed just 23 points and it's coming from all over. It's Van Ginkel, it's Pat Jones. I mean, there's all sorts of players making plays for that unit.
I know, and I love it. I love it because you have to have such a high football IQ to play in that defense because of, you know, when the team lines up, you as players and you have to have your formation calls, then you have checks based off of motions, checks on top of those checks.
Right.
So when they get lined up, the defense don't even necessarily know what exactly their end result is going to be. So their ability to disguise things, I mean, you've got safeties playing in the flats. You're putting the way that we talk about your CMCs and your Debos, right?
Doing it with defenders.
Precisely.
Josh Metellus being a great example. Plays everywhere. I interviewed Andrew Van Ginkel afterwards. He played it in at half time. And I said to him, I didn't know what position to introduce you as.
No.
You're just a defender for them because you play so many different ways. What they did against San Francisco wasn't the New York Giants in week 1. That's where it's so impressive. So we don't have to pick that one because that's a tough one to pick. We do have to pick this one. Philadelphia are 1-1, taking on the New Orleans Saints, who are 2-0. So this is our first game on Sky on Sunday night. New Orleans have scored 91 points in the first 2 games of the season, second most in NFL history. They opened the season with 15 straight scoring drives, all against the backdrop of, in the offseason, The Athletic did a fan confidence poll. And the confidence rating for New Orleans Saints fans was 32nd in the NFL. So they didn't believe in their own team. And what a start. I don't think we can quite believe the numbers ourselves.
No, not at all. I mean, what like Dennis Allen has done in terms of, you know, bringing a new coordinator, kind of creating this like second lifeline for himself. I mean, they're just doing such a great job with Derek Carr, creating tons of play action. They found a way to understand what their weaknesses are and be able to build and play on that and disguise it almost. And it's been exciting to watch. It's been exciting for Derek Carr to kind of come to life and, you know, run game last week with Alvin Kamara. Like it's been incredible and like pretty mind blown, really. Because for me, coming into this, I thought the Falcons were going to take that division. But now, move over, Kirk Cousins. Derek Carr's back.
Derek Carr's back. Alvin Kamara's back. He had 4 touchdowns last week. I saw a couple of numbers as I was driving into Sky. Sorry, being driven into Sky.
Oh, you know, posh.
They've used motion 88% of the time. That's a kind of Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel thing. And either run the football or run play action 80.5% of the time. So they're kind of confusing. It's definitely a new Saints. And Derek Carr's the big beneficiary. A rating of 142.4, best in the NFL. 158.3 is perfect, so he's not far off. 11.4 yards per attempt. There's no dinking and dunking here. They are going for it.
I mean, that's the best way. Just keep staying ahead of the sticks, right? If you never get into those 3rd and short positions because you're constantly getting first downs. I mean, imagine if you could call a play that you're pretty much guaranteeing you're going to get a first down on. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's so aggressive. The other side of the ball, Jalen Hurts. He's accounted for 4 touchdowns in 2 games, 3 passing, 1 running, but he's had 4 turnovers as well, 3 interceptions and a lost fumble, which is kind of where he was last year, especially at the back end. He'll make plays, but he'll also make some bad plays. So I'm kind of confused about where the Eagles are right now with that late collapse against the Falcons.
Yeah, and I think that, I know we talk a lot about being Jalen Hurts and Saquon should have grabbed the ball, but ultimately it's the play call. I mean, you're 3rd and 3, just run the ball, understand the time that you're in.
So late in the game.
Literally. And because if you just get that first down, you've pretty much kind of closed the game out. But you're not able to make those in-game decisions or situational decisions. And then it kind of all just goes downhill from there. Defense can't stop anything. And so it is a funny position that the Eagles are in right now. I thought they would have been in a better position, or at least like built on from last year. Because
it just turns the dial up a little bit on Nick Sirianni, doesn't it? The pressure with that kind of play call late, because he was under scrutiny back end of last season with their collapse.
Yeah, hugely. And I think this year in particular for Sirianni is a lot of stress on him.
Right.
You know that you should have been going to the Super Bowl essentially again last year, at least made like a deep playoff run, and, to be winning so many games and then still not be successful at the end of it.
Right.
At some point, ownership is going to have a conversation with you, and you're going to feel that pressure. Like your head coach role could be in the hot seat.
All right, so this one is in New Orleans. You're going to notice a theme here that develops, Phoebe. When I'm not sure who to pick,
I
always
next.
let you go first. So who's going to win this game between the Saints and the Eagles in New Orleans?
I'm going to go for the Saints. I can't believe I'm saying that. Who do you think?
I'm going to say the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
I think they could have been 2-0. They could have finished that game out. They should have finished that game out. They have still got some issues in the secondary, which might play into the Saints' hands. I think it's going to be a good one, but I feel like the Saints party will end this week. So we were all agreement last week.
We were.
This time we're going to differ. Don't need to spend too long on this one, but I think it's fascinating. The Los Angeles Chargers are 2-0, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-0. Pittsburgh have scored 31 points and 1 touchdown in 2 games, and they're 2-0. So that's just Mike Tomlin. But I wanted to talk about the Chargers. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh's won wherever he's been.
Yeah.
And last week they beat Carolina 26-3. They called 21 passing plays and 44 running plays. Now, part of that was controlling the clock.
Yeah.
But that is where he wants to be, isn't it, Jim Harbaugh? Even if he's got Justin Herbert.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're looking at the game you're going into this week against the Steelers with a TJ Watt, you're going to have to be creative with how you're going to slow him down.
Right.
Or, attack him, whichever way you want to skin that cat. But I like the kind of marriage with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. I think he's been really good for him. We talk about his college experience and how you're able to help. Justin Herbert just needed that guy for so long. Yeah. And in the past, they've struggled with closing a game out. And I feel like Jim Harbaugh knows how to close a game out. And so that's kind of why, for me, I'm feeling like I'm going towards Chargers on this one.
Yeah.
I just don't have enough faith in the Steelers to be able to pull everything together. They'll be physical, but that's just not enough.
You need to find some more offense as well. And I don't feel like Justin Fields. I feel like the quarterback job is still open.
Yeah.
It was Russell Wilson's in camp, coming out of camp. Then he got hurt. So here was a great opportunity for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And I don't feel he's fully grabbed that. So is it still kind of up in the air?
Yeah. I mean, he just doesn't make it look easy.
Right.
And it doesn't look like, again, we talk about that command of the offense. He still kind of looks like that young guy coming into the league.
I feel like they need to cut him loose. If they're going to do it, just let him be Justin Fields. I feel like they're trying to make him into a legit passing quarterback, and he's probably not that.
But that's what's so interesting about that is that's what, the Broncos wanted to do with Russell Wilson. Then you bring him here and you think, all right, well, let's let him be a bit more free. But then the same situation's happening. You have to understand who an athlete is and where their strengths are and where their confidence comes from. Let them be free.
Yeah. I mean, I spoke to Sam Darnold in the locker room last week. Didn't give him a hug. Didn't hug him.
Why didn't you hug him?
Because I just feel like I was too forward of me.
Oh, okay.
It was too early. It was too soon. I didn't even go for the handshake, then goodbye hug. I just did handshake, double handshake.
Okay.
But he was saying that Kevin O'Connell, it's definitely Kevin O'Connell's offense in Minnesota. But of course, he asks Sam Darnold what he likes.
Yeah.
And what he's good at.
Yeah.
and then you build it around there. Maybe I don't feel that's happening in Pittsburgh necessarily.
No, I don't think so.
This is a fascinating game. Detroit at Arizona, and it's because the Cardinals woke up last week. So both teams are 1-1. Detroit lost at home last week to Tampa Bay. Arizona had a big win at home against the Rams. Let's start with the Cardinals then, because Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison was a real thing last week and something to behold. And if Kyler can be back to that kind of really good form, it's an interesting team to chart.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about Kyler Murray, talking about letting people be free.
Yeah.
I mean, he had freedom. He was able to be creative outside of the pocket. I mean, some of those best throws of the game were him just creating.
8.5 seconds for one of them.
Yes.
Touchdown. He's rolling around like a video game again.
Exactly. But that's what makes him so special. Yeah. That's what he's wanted to do. And then he's able to then be in the pocket. They have some really well-designed run plays.
Yeah.
So you're kind of playing this really nice game, a nice balance, which is what we want to see from these teams. But Marvin Harrison Jr. has kind of been the guy that they've just needed for so long because, you know, they had Trey McBride, but they never had that guy.
No,
and you need that. Like, hey, I need a first down. Who am I throwing this to?
Yeah. No, I think there was some worry about week one. He only had one catch against Buffalo, but, you know, he was going to get up to speed. He's been talked about as a kind of future Hall of Famer. He's been given the big build-up. He certainly backed it up last week. Dan Campbell said he cost his team in week 2. They had a situation just before halftime where they could have run another play. They didn't. They got half the field goal unit out.
Yeah.
It all kind of got
a mess.
scrambled and messed up. That's kind of that's great that he does that and says that. But I think it was maybe an indication Detroit aren't quite hitting the heights yet that they had before.
No, and it does take a while to rebuild, you know, just because you went to a playoff team. And remember, it was their first time in the playoffs in 30 years, was it? I mean, it was...
Yeah, 90... Well, so they hadn't won a game since 91 season, And
so to be able to do that, there still is a hangover that comes with, like we talked about, the Super Bowl hangover, because you've built it up, you made it so far, and then you have to repeat all of that success again. And this will be the first time that Dan Campbell and the Lions are there's an expectation on them now, right?
100%. They've got to win the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it does, that narrative, people will say they're not listening to it. It does change the feeling and atmosphere in a building.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an element of that. And, you know, he said himself, he's not always been the best in some of these situations. So having that assistance there. But I think the matchup for me, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson didn't have to do much to be successful last week. Kept the same move and they couldn't slow him down. So my concern is more so, you know, how does that offensive line deal with the defensive line?
Right.
But also, I love the Lions secondary. I think that was something we talked about them having to kind of improve in the offseason, and they've done a phenomenal job of that.
You're wearing Lions blue, so
I know.
If you're watching, Phoebe's all about the Lions this week. Our second game on Sunday is Baltimore at Dallas, and Baltimore 0-2 for the first time since 2015. Dallas went from winning on the road 33-17 in week 1 to losing at home 44-19. So will the real Cowboys please stand up? And for Baltimore, though, there's only been 4 0-3 teams that have made the playoffs since 1990. So they're in a hole. This is like your classic kind of we have to stand up now kind of game for the Ravens, isn't it?
Yeah, and I really do think that they can do this, right? Because of who the Cowboys have played lately, they kind of just looked not special.
Yeah.
Like yes, you've got Micah Parsons, but they didn't look like they had much talent across the board,
there is a conversation to be had there whether they are worse on paper than they were last year. They lost a lot of pass rushers. Yep. They don't have an established running back.
Mm-hmm. And I think that plays into a big role, right? You have the worst run offense and the worst run defense. So neither of those go very well when you're trying to be successful.
Well, that speaks to toughness as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point about losing people in the offseason, especially from the defensive line, you know, just because you have Micah Parsons, that doesn't mean that he's going to be able to do it all. Part of how you make Micah Parsons great is by putting in other great pieces around him that take that attention away, that can be physical and tough at the line of scrimmage. So when it comes to now Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who I know Derrick Henry didn't have the best game this past weekend. However, those two can run all around you. And they've not gone against a quarterback like Lamar so far this season. Deshaun Watson was not the same standard by any means. And I think that they can run all over them again.
The good thing for Baltimore is that Lamar can take off and run. The bad news for Baltimore is that he had to quite a bit in week one, certainly against Kansas City. But they are really going to test that run defense, aren't they? Because like you said, that's where it will start, surely, for Baltimore, is with Lamar and Derrick Henry.
Hugely. And again, it's all a copycat league, right? You're going to see what the Saints did against them, going that base personnel. Well, if they can't stop us here, let's try that again. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of that from the Ravens as well. Just to literally, like you're saying, test the run game, have some QB designed run plays as well. Can they actually match up when you've got someone like Lamar Jackson back there running the ball?
Big test for both these quarterbacks. And actually, their situation will not really be properly assessed until January. Again, because this is fascinating. Lamar Jackson has won 3 division titles with the Ravens and just 2 playoff games. Dak has won 4 division titles with Dallas and just 2 playoff games.
Wow.
These guys are right up there as some of the best in the league, but they're going to be judged by the end of the season. And they still have moments where, that game should not have got away from Baltimore last week against the Raiders, up by 10.
No.
They've blown some big leads in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
In the last 2 or 3 years, there was a big game against Miami. They've had a few 10-point leads in the fourth quarter that they've lost.
Yeah, and I think that was a conversation. Who are you in the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Some teams get stronger. Some teams like the Ravens, even the Chiefs, a lot of times they just kind of fizzle out in that fourth quarter. Right. And again, I know we're still early in the season, so there's still that element of literal football fitness that's being built, especially going against more physical teams. But that's really where it matters most. You've got to be able to punch it in. It can't also just be relying on your kickers at that point. You've got to put on 7s, not 3s.
Yeah. We're going to pick this one as well. I must be more confident because I'm going Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going first.
I'm going to have to follow suit here,
Baltimore,
to be honest.
then.
Although the Cowboys have something to prove right now.
Yeah, they both do. That's why it's a fascinating game, this one, because they both be licking their wounds after week 2. Sunday Night Football is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Atlanta Falcons. So Kansas City have seen off Baltimore and Cincinnati. 2 big tests early in the season. But I wrote this earlier in the week. They're an inch away from losing to Baltimore and a pass interference penalty. Talk about fine margins. Now, all credit to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They found a way to win those games. They made sure they won those games. They could be 0-2. That's the fine line in the NFL.
Yeah, 3 turnovers in the last game goes to show that things are not quite clicking, but they're just able to just, like you're saying, that one step kind of outstep their opponents. And that's what makes this game quite interesting, because if you get a Kirk Cousins that really comes to life, perhaps they added more of that play action that he does so well. He could really pick apart a defense. Yeah. And then alternatively, with Pacheco being injured, what is
out 6 to 8 weeks with a broken leg? So
what does that mean for the Chiefs running game? Because he is a huge part of that. He is a huge threat. How do they use Xavier Worthy? There were some questions I had around Patrick Mahomes' decision-making in that last game, which made me feel like, maybe they're not quite where I thought they were. Maybe they aren't quite as ahead as I thought they were.
Yeah, he's had 3 interceptions in 2 games. And I guess when you're a player that ad-libs so much, and maybe he feels like he can keep pushing that envelope, which will lead to more and more. One of them was a fantastic one-handed catch for an interception. But
that was incredible.
The mistakes are certainly there for Mahomes at the moment. That's something to get out of his system. And to your point about Kirk Cousins, the last 20 minutes against the Eagles, he went 11 of 14, 146, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So there is a chance for him to test the Chiefs. But then here comes a defense that might actually be the best in the NFL.
Yeah.
Certainly one of them now, isn't it?
Yeah, hugely. And you have to find an answer to Chris Jones. He is the game wrecker.
Right.
On third down, he almost every time gets into the backfield.
Yep.
But the rest of the time, they've got such an incredibly strong line.
Yeah.
I don't know where you go with that. And if you're coming from the Falcons offensive line, who we thought were supposed to be the strength coming into the season and really have kind of been a letdown, that Chiefs defensive line are going to be licking their chops,
Yeah.
waiting to get to Kirk Cousins, who they know will hang in there, throw the ball, and make a mistake.
I mean, he wasn't a running quarterback before he tore his Achilles, so he's
No.
not going to become one now at 36 years of age coming off that injury. So,
No.
Bigger picture with the Chiefs. There's a lot of... It's funny how people view the Chiefs now. So it used to be they were the darlings. They were the ones that were going to end the Patriots' reign of terror. Now people see them like the Patriots.
Yeah.
They almost see them like, oh, Chiefs are in another Super Bowl. Oh, the Chiefs won again. The Chiefs found a way. And they do have some good fortune. You know, they do have some of that. But then did Patrick Mahomes create that by scrambling around and at least getting the ball downfield to draw the penalty? I think they make some of their own luck. I think they have some fortune, but I think good teams tend to find that luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some people are probably tired. I'm not saying who, are tired of the Taylor Swift element that comes with it, the noise that comes
Why
around.
Why are you looking at me?
I could look anywhere.
You have to. I'm the only other one.
Yeah,
in
exactly. Just the two of us in here, Neil.
Hey, the cat fits.
But
maybe
the noise around it, and ultimately people want there to be a new change in kind of reign, but actually people don't like other people being successful ultimately.
Right, yeah.
So I think there's that piece, but I think they're so much fun to watch, and I think they're so talented. And who doesn't want to see Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time,
doing greatness.
Crazy throws.
It's interesting within all of that, which maybe gets lost to a degree, but then there is a lot of attention on him because of Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce in 2 games has 4 catches for 39 yards.
Yep.
They've actually not even began to do anything with him.
No, he was kind of redundant. And I think in the last game, there was a penalty. He kind of managed to get called on him.
Right.
But that was the most value he added really to that drive or that game ultimately. So it's interesting to see, but we've seen it before, right? He kind of starts to come to life in the playoff games where the moments really matter.
Bijan Robinson's had 116 scrimmage yards per game, so he's a big part of the Falcons, isn't he? He's going to have to be moving forward.
Yeah, and again, like you bring in Kirk Cousins and you bring in a coordinator who's able to put Bijan in the right places and be utilized. I mean, his ability to get those, whether it's yards after catch or just his actual yards from the line of scrimmage, he's fascinating. He's so explosive. His ability to kind of in contact find that balance and keep driving his feet. That's what makes him so fun to watch.
Who do you like in this one? See what I did?
I see. You're unsure. I get it. I've bet against the Chiefs too many times, but I'd love to see the Falcons do well, but I'm going to say Chiefs.
So
what about you?
Well, I did the same. I picked against Kansas City week 1. I think I picked against them week 2.
Oh, no.
So I need to learn my lesson, which means I'm going to pick the Chiefs, which means congratulations, Falcons. You're going to have a win.
You're going to win it.
You're going to have a win. So it's a. Are we seeing with these teams now, just to finish off, like you're going to get a couple of weeks in now. We're still not to that point where you're hitting full speed. No. That's still a way off, but I just feel like it's a bizarre season already.
It is, and I'm shocked that we're going into week 3, and I feel like the storylines that have been occurring these first 2 weeks have been insane. I mean, so many moving pieces, but that's what we love about the NFL.
Like I picked San Francisco and Baltimore for the Super Bowl. Baltimore haven't won a game. The 49ers have just lost. New Orleans are 2-0. Tampa Bay are 2-0. Seattle are 2-0. I mean, what do we know anymore?
I don't know anything. I said Green Bay and I can't even remember who else at this point, and I've lost.
Also, Green Bay are like bizarre, and I thought Jordan Love was going to be on ice. It's like every week it's like, well, he might be back. It's like,
I know.
He's going to come back much quicker than I think we all thought there. So.
Yeah, exactly. MCL, I think he just... I mean, it's amazing the technology nowadays, too, that they have for recovery. I mean, people recovering from Achilles in less than 6 months is wild.
All right, it's going to be another good week. So we are on air on Sky Sports NFL from 5 o'clock on Sunday. We've got the Saints and the Eagles, and we've got the Ravens and the Cowboys, and then Sunday Night Football, which will be the Chiefs and the Falcons. So I'll be back with Jeff on Monday. Until next Thursday, we don't have a goodbye yet. Should we say goodbye and wave?
Yeah, okay.
We'll see you next time. Thank
Bye.
you.